Good evening. Today is Thursday, September the 7th, 2017, and this video is being recorded shortly after 9:50 p.m. Eastern Daylight Time. Please remember to only make decisions based upon official forecasts released from the National Hurricane Center or your local National Weather Service office when making decisions about evacuation or storm preparedness. So we are still keeping our eye on Irma as it continues its trek into some of the warmest waters in the Atlantic Basin. And this is GO-16, the latest satellite, the geostationary satellite we have. Some infrared look down into Irma, and if we zoom in here, we can see what is currently going on. And a little grainy, you get the idea. So the eye of Irma, as you can see, it's still very well defined, still a Category 5, packing winds of 175 miles per hour sustained. And it is currently passing just south to the Turks and Caicos Islands, which I think is home to about 39,000, 38,000 people, very populated islands in this area, especially this island, Providenciales, right here, which the eye is passing just south of there. So those folks are in for a long night and long early morning tomorrow, as may not get a direct landfall on there, but still the eye wall is going to have major impacts on that location. Down here in Managua Island, not as populated, but a lot of wildlife still. Looks like it'll avoid a direct hit, but still major impacts from this monster hurricane that's out in the southern Bahamas right now, southern Bahama Islands. And over here we have Mayaguana Island and then the Crooked Island, which is also, I think there's a couple hundred people on each of those islands. So there are people out here. You can only hope and pray that they know about the hurricane that's coming. Some places like this don't have the proper infrastructure, and I may know, but you hope they're staying safe and doing so. But as Irma continues, it looks like it may, if I speed this up, get a better idea, it looks like it's starting to take a more westward jog than northwestward, so hopefully this goes just north of Managua Island here and avoids any land at all costs, but it is moving this general direction, and it will split this island before moving closer towards Florida, and Cuba is outlined right here, so you can get a kind of general idea. So that's where the storm currently is, that's where it's currently heading. The warmest waters in its path are still in between the storm and Florida right now. So as it continues to progress closer toward Florida on the current forecast track, it is going to encounter those very warm sea surface temperatures and deep columns of warm water, which will help just to intensify or lead to potential further intensification of the storm, which is certainly not what we want. So if we look here, we do have 3 active hurricanes, 2 major hurricanes currently active in the Atlantic Basin, Hurricane Irma and Hurricane Jose. Katia is still spinning and is looking to make a beeline into Mexico. So hopefully that won't cause too many rain issues down in Mexico, but our main concern is Irma, as Jose is forecast to turn back out to sea. So if we click on Irma, it's easy to navigate website, the National Hurricane Center, the official source where you need to get your information. And the current forecast cone has shifted a little bit to the west, as a couple of model guidance and ensemble members have kind of been showing this trend of splitting the spine of Florida and going up in kind of a worst case scenario track. Unfortunately, just following this path into Florida, which is certainly not what we wanted to see, but you can see it maintaining its major, indicated by this M, major hurricane status, and this solid white hue is a 3-day track. So to give you kind of a scale of time, this would be Sunday evening, making a potential Florida landfall, maybe around late Saturday night, midnight Saturday night. Some models are depicting a landfall right around midnight, that time frame, in that area, which would be very devastating. So evacuations are in place. A state of emergency is in effect for Florida, coastal Georgia, South Carolina, and North Carolina now, I believe. So certainly we're in a state of preparedness. Now's the time to take action. But as you can see, the window is quickly waning on preparation time, and it's becoming transitioning to that time where you need to take action and make sure that you're prepared for an extremely devastating hurricane. It's obviously not going to lose any strength, and it may weaken and fluctuate in intensity slightly, but it's going to be a very impactful system, as you can see by this cone. And if we go to probabilistic tropical storm force wind speed, so this is also shifted west along with the track, and I'll go into more detail in this in just a moment with a little scenario kind of chart I'm going to draw up to show some impacts in North Carolina here. But this is a probabilistic graphic showing the probability of tropical storm force sustained winds, and the more red the hue, the greater the chance. So you can see this is 5 days, 5 days, 120 hours. So as you can see, even getting into when Irma makes if it does make its landfall, it's forecasted to make this approach inland into this bend of the southeast, and areas well inland will see sustained tropical storm force winds. There's a high probability that that will be the case, which will likely lead to widespread power outages. Maybe not damaging winds per se, but enough. I lost power in Hurricane Matthew last year in central North Carolina with 40-mile-per-hour winds and heavy rain, without power for about 3 days. So it doesn't take much to knock certain weaker electrical grids out and to lose electricity. So hopefully that's not the case, but it looks like there's going to be a high impact of power outages all in this area, not to mention the catastrophic storm surge, very devastating winds, and all kinds of just a mess for Florida if this track does verify where it's going right up the peninsula of Florida. So I want to take a step back here and kind of draw a few scenarios to what our impact in North Carolina really looks like, because that's the most common question I'm getting on my Facebook page and my Twitter is, what's the impact for North Carolina? Because that's where, I'm based out of. So notwithstanding the impacts that Florida will feel, all 4 coastal states here, North Carolina, South Carolina, Georgia, and Florida, are in line to have some kind of impact, whether it be from wind or from rain, storm surge along the coast. So I'm going to draw up 3 paths here. Let's do one in red. And take the center of Irma right about here when it stops and go. It's not very thick. Make it a little thicker so we can see. So this is the current forecast track and kind of has it going up here. Let me do a yellow track in addition to that. This is another track that had happened, and there is still potential for a track that would veer a little bit more out to sea. You never know. These things have a mind of their own. They can do all kinds of things. So there's 3 tracks here. So the current forecast track is currently what the National Hurricane Center and what most model guidance is pointing to, that it's going to, shave here along the Florida coast or make a direct impact along the spine of Florida. Well, what you have to remember here is that right now, I think I can stop this from looping, and maybe not. But the thing to work with here is that Irma is about 600 miles wide. I'll show that to you in a moment when I measure here. So if the center of circulation is anywhere along this line, impacts will be felt about 300 miles on either side of that. So if this track maintains, North Carolina will have minimal impacts, but when I say minimal, I mean, moderate rain, lighter wind gusts, but still you'll feel the presence of Irma. You'll have gusty winds Sunday, Monday, Tuesday. I'm not exactly sure the exact time frame, but around that frame, depending on the speed of the storm, you'll feel the strong wind gusts. We'll get showers, and we'll have to watch out for the chance of isolated tornadoes, but it will be to a minimum degree. Most of that dangerous weather would be over South Carolina, Georgia, and obviously Florida from the direct impact. But North Carolina, especially central North Carolina, in this area where most of the constituency of my page is, a couple scattered about here, but central North Carolina would be least affected by this track that it's currently on. If it does make a trend back to the east and track this way, not only would it cause devastating storm surge down in the coastal South Carolina, but North Carolina, being on the right front quadrant of the system, would have probably the worst wind impacts. We would have widespread power outages due to the wind. The silver lining with the storm is that it does have pretty good forward speed. It's moving at a good clip, so flooding rains wouldn't be as much of an issue, but there would certainly be a flash flooding threat due to so much rain in a short amount of time. But a prolonged flooding event like Matthew, where you have freshwater river flooding due to prolonged rains, wouldn't be an issue. And as the National Weather Service Raleigh tweeted, the antecedent conditions are much drier than Matthew. So in other words, the ground's not already saturated. There's not forecast rain after the event. It would just be a chunk of rain in the forecast, and it would move on. So that is a silver lining, that if Irma does track inland, it would be more of a flash flooding issue and just a power outage issue, maybe a little bit of wind damage if it took this yellow track. But that would probably be the maximizing the impacts over North Carolina. South Carolina would get it bad, and of course Miami area, Fort Lauderdale down here in Florida would get the direct impact effects. If it for some reason decided to curve back out to sea a little bit and clip the Outer Banks or ride the coast, that would also kind of produce minimum impacts for North Carolina, maybe a good bit of rain. Obviously, I mean, it's a Category 5 hurricane. There's going to be massive impacts no matter where you go, but nailing down the impacts is quite difficult, but you have to generally accept this is a huge storm that's going to have huge impacts. No matter what track it takes, we're going to feel the presence of Irma. It's a matter of in what way. Will it be 6 inches of rain and widespread power outages? Sorry about the chair squeaking there. Will it be a widespread power outage event? Will it be characterized by wind damage? Will it be characterized by flash flooding? That's kind of unknown, but you have to prepare for all of those. You have to prepare for widespread power outages. You have to prepare for the possibility of flash flooding. Plan to not travel during when Irma is making its approach inland. The current forecast track has it. I have classes on Tuesday. I don't want to be driving in that in the heavy rains and weather. So you need to plan ahead and minimize any activity you have outside of the safety of your home or your safe place. If you've evacuated along coastal Florida, coastal Georgia, coastal South Carolina, just minimize your presence outside, and that should help with this storm. And I'm going to see if I can get back here and measure. Yes, here we go. So just to measure the breadth of the storm right now, kind of going, well, maybe this will work. Bisecting the eye here, you can see it's about 580 miles across. So this is a huge storm system. If the center of the eye is anywhere within that forecast cone that we showed here, that means, if the forecast cone, if this is a perfect forecast, which it is not, but if it were to follow this track perfectly and say the center of circulation ends up around this area, well, we're well within 300 miles of that area in central North Carolina. We would feel the residual winds as Irma winds down. Once again, it's a Category 5 hurricane right now. It's a huge heat engine. It's a huge system. So it's going to take a while for it to wind down and for all of those effects to kind of diminish. So we're going to feel the presence of Irma. It's a matter of in what way. And until it makes that northward turn, once again, I reiterate, it's such a big system. It might take a little longer for it to turn. It may turn quicker. It depends. When storms get this big, sometimes they even kind of have a dependence, to, almost autonomous. They kind of do their own thing. They deviate from the track because, you may have heard supercell thunderstorms can kind of bear right sometimes. They can turn right because they're so powerful in themselves. They control their direction. I'm not saying Irma's going to go and, aim for somewhere else, but these models predict paint a picture of what's likely to happen due to the atmospheric conditions. So as we continue to sample the data and it gets closer, about 2 days out now from making a potential landfall, we get a better idea of what's going to happen. So just take all that information in, absorb it. In central North Carolina right now, I prepare for gusty showers, wind gusts up to tropical storm force, 40, 45 miles per hour at maximum right now. If you're in South Carolina, I would prepare for much worse weather. Same goes for Georgia, Atlanta, Augusta, Athens area, Savannah, Georgia's under a mandatory evacuation. So Florida just looks to bear the brunt of this storm, no matter how you play the cards. So unfortunately for them, it looks like it's going to be a big deal for them, and we hope that everyone heeds the evacuations, heeds orders, and stays safe. But it looks like it's going to be quite a doozy of a storm, no matter how you do it, and with such a massive storm system. Certainly don't want to take anything for granted, and you don't want to underestimate the system. It's very big, 600 miles across. It's the beast of a storm. There's just no other way to put it. So absorb all that information. If you have any questions, feel free to message me on Facebook. I'll post another update tomorrow. This one's also running long, but I just long-winded, and you have to keep going with the information. So I hope this was informative to you, and if you have any questions, feel free to contact me via Facebook or Twitter. I'll have another update out tomorrow. Hopefully we'll have a better idea of impacts in North Carolina here, but right now I'd prepare for bouts of heavy rain, the possibility, the likelihood of widespread power outages, and flash flooding. And if you have any loved ones in this area, be sure that they know the situation, and just take all precautions to be safe, be smart, plan accordingly, and I'll see you on the next update. Thanks.